Hey, Christopher, what a week we got ahead, huh?
Yeah, this is fantastic. We've got autumn leaves coming down, and the trees are going to ultimately become bare for the season, and feeling that lessening, I guess you could say, because a lot of those real tight squares that we've been frustrated with and having to deal with are finally separating just a little bit. And so a lot of the tension that we've been noticing for the last couple of months is going to lighten up a little bit for people. I think it's going to be a nice autumn.
Yeah, this is weird times. We're about to go off that cliff we talked about, or that ride with Saturn, as Saturn now is about to go deeper into Scorpio this week, so we get to explore the new realms of Saturn and Scorpio. We're getting prepared here for a Mercury retrograde. And this Mercury-Saturn energy has been really powerful and intense. It really, I think, is helping our understanding of this Saturn-Scorpio realm, where in our lives we're being highlighted in a certain spot. It's undeniable. In some ways, it can feel dark. It could feel a little off. It could feel weird because it's dealing with emotion. It's dealing with, hidden underneath things. And so I think we're coming into this week with this kind of weird energy inside of our heads of like, okay, we know there's something in our lives here that we got to pay attention to. It's underneath and we got to figure it out. And this Mercury retrograde we're preparing for has a lot to do with what we just went through, because Mercury will pass over Saturn a couple more times during this retrograde. So I think we come into this week with, something to figure out deep inside.
Well, Mercury is a great communicator, and Saturn is definitely the disciplinarian planet. It's going to give form and structure to our communication skills. So we may find that, we're talking to people and all of a sudden they're actually hearing what we're saying in depth, or it goes extreme in the other direction where it's like talking to a brick and not really getting a response. So yeah, whenever you put these two planets together, it definitely crystallizes our communication. I think it's probably the best way to highlight that. And we're starting off now with the moon trundling over Pluto in Capricorn on Friday as people are watching this video. And the moon is, for some reason, it seems to me the moon has been very influential with dreams. I know that a lot of my clients and I myself have been talking about dreams and experiencing a lot of profound shifts and insights that have been coming through the dream world. So as Saturn is conjunct Pluto, I think we're going to have kind of that big grand finale like at the end of the fireworks display on the 4th of July. We're going to have all these sparkly things go off. And so I would say Saturday, Sunday, even into Monday, people probably want to watch their dreams and pay attention to it, because as it moves away from Pluto, it's going to move through Aquarius, and that's going to be in opposition to Mars down there in Leo, and then it's going to move into Pisces in conjunct with Neptune. And of course, the moon and Neptune really love to explore those fantasy worlds and bring things up from the subconscious. So very intense week for dreamers, I think. And a lot of people are going to dream in such a way that they haven't noticed it for a while.
Yeah, these dreams are also digging the deepest aspects of our subconscious with the Saturn moving deep into Scorpio. I mean, it's hidden stuff, and in many ways, the player of the dreams is your way to watch the DVD of your subconscious. I mean, it's like, wow, it's like this could really play out a lot. But what interests me is this weekend we have the Sun square Jupiter this weekend, and so in many ways, the way I've been looking at this is I've been really wanting to wrap my head around this. I've been doing a lot of horoscopes, been doing a lot of readings this week, and looking at this Sun-Jupiter square. And you know, because it's in Cancer and it's in Libra, and these are two cardinal signs, Jupiter's really kind of the master at this point. He's in exaltation. You know, I think the reason why the moon has been so influential on our dreams and our life is because it's so connected with Jupiter there in Cancer. You know, our feelings are getting really pulled into all these directions, pulling more subconscious stuff, pulling all this energy. And the sun squares Jupiter this weekend. I think there's a lot to pay attention to here in your life of opening more doors and making sure you're opening doors. You know, Libra energy tends to hang on the fence and, you know, really want to weigh it out. It's a very intellectual sign. But Jupiter in Cancer is exaltation. It's very strong. It's very open up more, open your feelings up more. And I think this weekend, as you're describing what happens with the moon passing through Capricorn into Aquarius, which can tend to kind of want to limit feelings a little bit. You know, it's not the best area usually for feelings. It's in its opposite area. And here we have the sun squaring Jupiter. I think the lesson is to continue to find ways to open up, continue to find ways to stay optimistic. This Mercury-Saturn energy can kind of make people a little depressed, make people a little, you know, funky. And I think the lesson is to open up. And I think that you're right. These dreams and these emotions and these subconscious energies that are pulling us can start to unveil a story that only you could piece together, in really learning how to understand the story of what you're digging for in your life. And if you're not open or willing to explore your feelings, you're not going to find that harmony where the work is, I feel.
Yeah, that's very much a fact. And it is interesting that, you know, we not only have Jupiter square Sun, but we have the Sun squaring Moon, as the Moon will be moving through Capricorn. But then it flips, and the Moon will be in trine to the Sun as it hits Aquarius, and it'll be interactive with Mars down there in Leo. And then as it moves through Pisces, it'll be hitting Neptune, trining Saturn, and then hitting Chiron. So we've got a lot of different, very rapidly moving emotions, like waves. It's almost like getting to that cycle where you've got the full moon and you've got this extended activity in the ocean. And that kind of is what's going on as the moon is moving through these three signs, is it's giving us like cresting waves coming up. The first are a little bit edgy from that square energy. The next cycle is going to be a little bit smoother, but perhaps higher, deeper waves, deeper troughs. And then we'll hit that kind of a mystical, revelatory cycle where Saturn, which is the great teacher, and Neptune and Chiron are all going to be activated by the passage of the moon. So yeah, very intense week for people. But I still don't get a sense of the scary, you know, the neighbor's got a gun and he's going after the other neighbor's dog kind of energy that we've had earlier in the month and in August and July. That tension, I think, is finally starting to lighten up a little bit.
Yeah, it's all of our own stuff, like internal stuff. It's all stuff that's buried deep within ourselves. This isn't very external energy. It's very internal. And we're getting ready for a huge lunar eclipse as the moon, you know, after it trines over to the sun, it's getting closer and closer to this lunar eclipse spot, which will happen in Aries. And, you know, so this is a very always weird karmic time. I love the eclipse season because I knew the ancients put this one down on their calendars, however they were. The ancients paid attention to these times. And I think once the sun passes this Jupiter square this weekend and we step into the week, you know, we see Venus start to trine over to Uranus. So this adds an element of some really radical things in our relationships, maybe some new things beginning. Maybe this could be new flames starting to burn. This can be finally the freedom in relationships that we've been looking for. Maybe, you know, you're finally over that relationship and the ex thing doesn't work out. Or, you know, this really kind of, I think, gives the partnership role kind of what we've been waiting for. You know, poor Venus went through a Saturn conjunction, then a square to Mars. Venus finally starts to free herself this week, which will will feel, and I think the external world will start to feel that too, but it's Mars this week that is leaving Leo, and it's going to come into Virgo and start to oppose Neptune. And this is going to be a big shift in our lives. The last time this happened was when Mars went retrograde in Virgo in 2012. And we had Mars sit there and oppose Neptune for like a month and a half. It was a very intense transit. But what I found out of that time in our lives was, you know, this is time for us to really get our lives together here and to really listen to the signs that Spirit is telling us. And this is a very exciting moment in our lives because Mars will start its trine to Pluto. You know, here's Venus trining Uranus. There's going to be this little window here to kind of get things together, adjust your lives properly, pay attention to your inner work, pay attention to your expansion. And I think this can be a great week for you if you're willing to put the work in, as it also is the last week of Mercury in Scorpio before a retrograde, to start to understand this work, to understand your truth, to understand your feelings, and start to readjust your reality just the way you should by expanding and growing. This could be one of those weeks where you push through your fears, you push through problems, you readjust things. As long as that Mars opposing Neptune listens to the intuition, I think you're good.
Oh, yeah, I think you're right with that. One of the things that I really like about Venus in aspect to Uranus, both of these signs, Sagittarius and Aries, have a playful second nature. There's a lot of innocence that comes through from the Aries energy, and there's a lot of that kind of butterfly, touch lightly on things and then move on energy that we get out of Sagittarius. And I think that watching this trine as Venus and Uranus interact, this could be one of those weeks when you go to the grocery store and on your way out there's a kid there with a box of kittens, and all of a sudden you go home with a cat. You know, it's that kind of spontaneous, delightful interaction of the planets that affects our lives and gives us something new that we carry with us for the next week or the next month or the next 10 years, you know. But it's that kind of playful and unexpected opportunities that will be coming along as we see Venus, especially in that Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday cycle when that trine intensifies. So it's going to be fun listening to what people are reading what people are posting on this video clip, because I think people are going to be finding these kind of enchanting moments during next week, and it will have a somewhat long-term effect on people. I think that people will carry either an actual object or a relationship or a memory with them for quite a while. And I think that's going to be kind of the gift that comes through during the process of the next 7 to 10 days.
Yeah, and I don't think anybody could have described it better. That kitten analogy is very well served, my friend. Hats off to you on that one, because Venus and Uranus does that, and especially Venus when she gets in the freedom zone and she gets in without stress. Gosh, have you ever seen a Libra more beautiful, especially a Libra woman, when she's free and there's no problems and everything's going great? It's like the most beautiful thing you've ever seen on the planet, I swear. You see the dress, there's a glow. That's Venus to me. And so we start to see that this week. And we start to see this in relationships, whether it's a cat or whether it's your partner. We start to see this in our feelings inside as, yes, we all know there's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of pressure on everybody. But there are these moments like you described that are making this reality still such a beautiful and amazing place to be, while we all are adjusting for this new age, while we're all changing our lives and adjusting to this new energy that has come to us. And it's a beautiful week with Mars, I think, opposing Neptune and switching signs, and the Moon and Neptune, when they conjunct midweek, it's happening right before Mars slips into Virgo as they oppose. And I think this is a really clear indication of compassion and nurturing and and spirituality that needs to influence our actions now, especially on the global scale with all these arguments and fights and government and all these things that can't come together. The masculine energy really needs to get its shit into gear. I mean, Neptune opposing it really pours as much ocean of water as it can on Mars in order to make sure that, you know, it remembers to be guided in its actions that it takes, especially when it comes into Virgo, which can get way too point-oriented. It can get way too erratic, way too specific in what it needs to accomplish and what it needs to conquer. Yet Neptune says, loosen up, drink a beer a little bit, you know, like chill out for a second. And the moon conjuncts this as this happens. So I think midweek we might see either it's going to be a flip, right? Finally, some sort of action taken in what we're starting to see in the world events and the problems, and in our own lives, us finally at a culmination point of taking a new direction or a new action with events like kitties coming into our life and all these things. It's like we need to pay attention to what move we make this week, because I think it's getting us prepared for the lunar eclipse that happens this weekend, which is kind of the fire off into this new season, which that's the way I see it.
Yeah, I think you're right on point there. One of the things that we often are given to ponder is that interaction between Mercury and Mars. And of course, Virgo is ruled by Mercury. And as Mars moves into that Virgo region, one of the most militaristic combinations is Mercury and Mars. And to give you kind of an idea about all these events that I have observed in my life, when I was drafted, I ended up going to Fort Bliss, Texas for my basic training, and I was dead bang under a Uranus line by astrocartography. And it was a very Uranian experience. I mean, for me, I was a peacenik and really in a complete disconnect from anything military in nature. So that was almost like a hallucination that I was forced to live through. And then when I went into the next level of training before I went to Vietnam, I ended up in the Chesapeake Bay region. And going back and then looking at it 20 years later, I discovered that there was a Mars-Mercury conjunction in that region, and I was functioning under that conjunction. And so I really got that clear insight of how you learn about militaristic things. Yeah, there's a lot of militaristic communication going on whenever you have Mars and Mercury in any kind of really concentrated interaction. So as Mars is moving through Virgo this year, I really do believe that we're going to see a lot of this conflictive energy, a lot of the desire to conquer, that sort of thing being discussed more. I think people are going to be looking at that and wanting to understand what it is that motivates us to be the policeman for the planet, that sort of thing. And then again, Mercury also, interestingly enough, has a lot to do with finance and money. And so as Mars moves through Virgo, we will probably see finances going through some significant adjustments. And if you're into the stock market, I would say be ready for a wild ride, because there's going to be a spike of activity the minute Mars moves into Virgo.
Yeah, and that militarization you talk about is that structure. Mercury in Scorpio wants to, like, it's intense, and with Mars in Virgo, it's structure, structure, structure. And you know, I was in the military too. It's like, have you ever seen a row of planes or a row of tanks in the military? I mean, they're on the line, they're perfect. Your suit and everything, your skivvies, everything's got to be perfectly and aligned. And this energy starts to come into our lives now, and you cannot forget about the Neptune opposition. Like, you've got to channel your direction correctly. Like, do not just, because you want to organize it a certain way, um, don't forget about, well, what does your soul say? Sometimes we can get, and we got to make sure we're not lost in our actions. Any opposition, especially with Mars, is very weird. Mars hates an opposition because Mars always wants to go forward. But I look at always an opposition as like, one or the other is the trailer to themselves. It's like Mars now has this Neptune trailer behind it before it can go anywhere, which is God and spirit and emotion and, all these things that embody our soul and our inner spiritual subconscious realms. So in order for Mars in the reality to correctly work right, it's got to take consideration. It's got a trailer behind it. You can't go more than 55 miles an hour with the trailer on the freeway. So you've got to make sure you're in the slow lane, I think. Make sure that you're correctly making your subconscious and your spiritual energies come in alignment before you switch lanes and pass the semi-truck. You just don't want to go, semi-truck, you're going to see people be misguided this week, and it can cause accidents. This could cause an accident in your life. So be very wary in your car this week. Sure, you might feel like you're in control, but the truth is, are you paying attention to the stuff behind the curtain and your subconscious energies? And you think you're driving, but really you're on your cell phone texting, which is it's very Pisces. Is like, how you can drive, but somehow you're like, how did I just drive 5 hours and I only looked at the road for 5 minutes and I was on my phone and I was doing my music and that subconscious energy that could take over. And I think this highlights it. And I think you're dead on the money with dreams. I think you're dead on the money that this is a weird subconscious week. And I think the introduction to Mars and Virgo really shows how these subconscious energies affect our reality intensely.
Exactly. And the other thing is, I've noticed whenever the moon is going through fire signs, people, to reinforce what you were talking about as far as driving habits, people are much more aggressive. And when the moon is in an air sign, people tend to be very fleet. There's wiggling through traffic. So as soon as the moon moves out of that earthy kind of sluggish sign over the weekend and hits Aquarius, it's yeehaw, giddy up. But then when it hits Aries, that's when you don't want to cut people off in traffic, because that's when the guy is going to get out of the car with his sawed-off shotgun and tap dance across your radiator. So yeah, we can expect a lot of aggressive energy, in part because of Mars's activity and in part because of the moon's activity over the next couple of weeks. And especially if you pay attention to what sign the moon is, it'll give you kind of a heads up as to what your driving patterns are going to be during the day.
And you want to pay attention to Mercury, which by the end of this week is dead stopped at 17-18, where it's going to go retrograde. I mean, Mercury is going to a halt this week. And Mercury is doing everything it can to get away from Saturn. It doesn't like to stop. And I think this is going to be a very interesting and unique and different Mercury retrograde because it's trining Jupiter, it's conjuncting Saturn, it's by the eclipses. The eclipses are all going to happen in the middle of all this. There's so much highlighted here. I think we're going to be stunned. I think Mercury, as it starts to trine Jupiter as we're coming to the end of this week, and the direct motion could really be these big understandings, these big feelings, this big aha moment start to come. But I think we're going to be directed a couple times in this area, as Mercury is going to trine Jupiter a couple times. And also, it's going to trine it again when Jupiter goes retrograde in the first week in November. So this is just, I think this is hold on to your safety belts, because this is a really powerful and dynamic week that's preparing you for a lot, preparing you, getting you correctly positioned again for, it's a new age, and the universe is just shaking it up. I mean, this is just like another shake-up, and I think this week, pay attention to your subconscious energies, pay attention to your reality, pay attention to this greatness that comes this week, because we're preparing here, and the sun is getting ready to come into Scorpio, which is going to get ready for a solar eclipse. I mean, eclipse season is, I mean, it's better than Shark Week on Discovery Channel.
Generally can be, yes. The other thing is, as Mercury is doing this forward and then backwards movement, don't forget that we have got Chiron sitting up there too, that is going to be interactive in this grand trine process. And I would see this Mercury first kind of, kissing Chiron lightly on the cheek as it moves forward, and then it'll come back and it'll be interactive with Chiron, Saturn, and of course Jupiter. And I think that there can be some very profound healings going on in the process of all of this, because Chiron is the wounded healer, and it does give us that deeper understanding as far as what our own wounds, our own problems are. And as we seek to assist those around us and help heal those around us, we end up healing ourselves. So this could be the beginning of a profound cycle of inner transformation, healing, and release of a lot of the old wounded energy that a lot of people have been carrying around for quite a while.
You just triggered something good. Venus squares Chiron at the end of this week as it starts to trine Uranus.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Chiron is being hit, and it is kind of the secret background subconscious energy of where, in many ways, I think Chiron's connected to a lot of this, as far as like you could see people lashing out maybe because they're trying to heal themselves incorrectly. They're not paying attention to their subconscious energy. They're not paying attention to their spiritual energy. They're not paying attention to the signs. And especially in what they're manifesting. Venus to me is like what manifests, whether it's money or a relationship or a house or anything. Whenever you look at Venus, it's the material realm of this earth. It's a lot part of the reality. And I think we're going to see more of this externalization of our internal selves increase as Mars comes into Virgo this week, as Venus really, comes into all this energy. So I think a lot of this Chiron energy is saying, like, hey, make sure you're not that wounded puppy in the corner that the second anybody comes to help you or anything in your life, because especially Venus there, that you're not lashing out on anybody. Like, whoa, like be guided in your actions. Remember to pay attention to your aggression and your anger, especially as Uranus is in there. He's connected with Venus, and there is this fire that you describe. Even when you're driving, there's the aggressiveness and all that. Like, I think with Chiron in the mix, there's something hidden. There's something in our subconscious that will unveil to you where you might lash out because of some subconscious fear you have or some subconscious energy you have that you're trying to heal,
Yeah, it definitely is coming through to us from hidden areas of our own personality. And that really is how a lot of the planetary interaction gives us insight and understanding, is that the planets will attract people or situations to us that are a reflection of things we're not witnessing about ourselves. So, if you have this, let's say the moon is hitting Neptune in your chart in the 8th house, and you have an extreme experience, the real depth of that comes to you in the form of recognizing that this is merely a reflection in the outer world of what has been going on in the inner world for an extended period of time. So we definitely need to recognize and embrace and be thankful for these realizations that are being given to us through the activity of the planets, that take us back to the ultimate foundation of everything that's going on here. And the reason for all of this is that everything in the exterior world is a reflection of the process that is going on in the interior world. So nothing that happens to you, nobody that shows up in your life, has anything to do with random chance. All of these events, all of these people are aspects of you. And as you look more deeply into your own personal chart, as you learn to dance with this movement of the planets as they interact with each other, you discover that your own sense of identity goes through multiple shifts and stages of transformation, and then you can finally incorporate and embrace all this energy and realize that you were actually teaching yourself these lessons about yourself.
I hope we recorded this. That was exactly the best way to describe Venus square Chiron as it trines Uranus in Aries. That was like it in a nutshell right there. That should be the encyclopedia description of it. We recorded this, right? That was excellent, Chris. That was wonderful. I think that's a great way to kind of go into the cards, really. I mean, that's kind of what this is leaning towards this week of like, you know, I see this as Neptune is almost stopping too, right? It's at 2 degrees. It's getting ready for its direct motion here in less than a month or about a month. And, you know, now Mars is charging forward in Virgo opposing it, and Neptune's stopping. So this is going to be where people kind of, God gives you a little bit more control of the putty externally for the first time, plus a lot of planets are shifting. You know, there's going to be this weird, like, people are really trying to adjust externally. But everything you just described about everything happening inside is where I think the unconscious and the conscious are going to come out big time this week. You're going to see people who are like, wow, they're really not aware, are they? You know, and they really think they just are the ones manipulating their external selves when they're paying no attention to the internal. And that's what I think this is all leading for this week. Before, here's Saturn at 11 degrees at the end of the week, plunging off. You know, this is us on the cliff top, preparing everything we described this week as we get ready for a huge lunar eclipse, and we jump next week into new territory.
Yeah, it's going to be territory that we'll recognize, though. It's not like we're going into uncharted territory. We're going into review territory, and we're going to be seeing a lot of things, a lot of people, a lot of circumstances show up over the next few months that are memories. We will be seeing history repeat itself, especially if we pay attention. So
especially if you were born after 84, you know, or before 84, you know, because Saturn Scorpio people, like any of the young kids right now watching this that have Saturn in Capricorn or Cancer or Capricorn or, you know, Aquarius or anything, you might not have been through these realms yet, you know, with Saturn. So for them, it's deep. But for those that have been around since, you know, before 84, for you, you've been here before, you know.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's definitely deja vu in stereo. Well, on Friday, the 11th of October, and I was going to mention this real fast, my October story. My father's birthday was October 10th, 1916. My father died in 1953, the day after his birthday, on October 11th. And I was born March 1st at 10:11 a.m. So the numbers that seem to always show up in my life is 10:11. And whenever I get that synchronistic experience of seeing 10:11 on a clock or 10:11, you know, somewhere around me, it's always pay attention because something's going on. And I wanted to share that little thought with people because we do have significant events, significant things that happen to us that give us kind of a depth sounding device. We can always tell where we're at when these little synchronistic things pop up for us. So for me, it's 10:11. But stop and think about numbers or visions of butterflies or whatever it is that show up for you frequently. And it usually means that you're being told to pay attention because things are going on. So we're starting off on Friday with a nice 4 of rods, and that is a card of the wedding dance. So this entire weekend, very Venusian kind of energy. And again, we were talking about how Venus is going to be starting to accelerate in trine to Uranus, and it's going to bring about these kind of sacred unions, hooking up with people, bumping into people, that enhance your life and give you that little bit of a period of grace as you're moving through the weekend. As we hit Monday, though, look at this, the Wheel of Fortune, and there is going to be a lot of karma coming around as we move into next week. Again, we've got all this activity with Mercury, we've got the activity with Mars. A lot of these planets are slowing down, getting ready to go backwards. Other planets are getting ready to go forward, so a lot of karmic back and forth. Midweek, we have, again, that Neptunian effect. We have the Moon card. Pay attention to your dreams and be sensitive to those little flash instincts. You know, if you feel like, oh, maybe I shouldn't go over to George's house tonight. You know, who knows? George may get raided by the feds, or his house may get burned down. So pay attention to your hunches, that kind of whispering voice in the back of your mind. And then by the end of the week, look at this, that beautiful card of transformation. Chrysalis, the death card. The worm becomes the butterfly. And of course, the worm has no idea what the life of a butterfly is like. And the butterfly has entirely forgotten what it was like to be the worm. So we'll be going through that transformative shift just as that full moon arrives and the solar eclipse carries us through the weekend. So fairly dynamic cards coming up for us.
Oh, I'm so glad that we pulled the Four of Rods. Funny enough, I'm going to be at a wedding this weekend, okay, with a good friend of mine. But it's so funny that Moon card, it was hilarious what you said, but how funny that Moon card comes up right when Mars switches into Virgo and opposes Neptune as the Moon is on Neptune. I mean, and I think you're right. You know, the actions you take but must be connected to your intuition, your guide, your internal selves, and your subconscious energy, because it could play out in so many different ways, whether you go into the wrong house, like a drug bust, like you say, or if you're like, you know, unconscious and hitting up your ex-girlfriend even though you know you shouldn't or something, and you end up and you're like, oh my gosh, we just did this, you know, like I just did this to myself. You don't want to do things like this. You got to think, what would Jesus do in your actions? I know that might sound a little, you know, crazy, but that's Neptune in Pisces, and I always say that to people whenever there's Neptune problems or whenever there's Pisces issues or there's ever, you know, compassion, guide, intuition, walk on water, you know. Walking on water is much more than a physical thing. It's a spiritual thing.
Exactly, and there's also the other great example that the Master Jesus gave us, which was transformation, turning the water into wine. So whenever you have anything going interactive with Neptune, especially when it's in Pisces, it's a very alchemical time, a transformative time. So be ready to, you know, be put on the spot. Somebody may ask you to turn that glass of spring water into a glass of champagne, and you'll probably be able to do it.
Excellent. I'm excited because I get excited for eclipses. I'm excited for Mercury retrograde that trines Jupiter. I mean, not typical, very rare. Also in the middle of the North Node energy force, you know, all this karmic energy. That Wheel of Fortune card you played this week, I think, is the turning of the wheel in all of our lives correctly to place us. It's kind of like when you go on a ride at Disneyland, like you're getting correctly loaded in. Okay, it's like aisle 5 with your family and going to number 4 and everybody number 3, and you know, everybody's getting lined up into the ride.
Exactly, and the ride is going to be great. You know, some of the earlier rides this year were like, Jesus save me from the outcome, but now we're getting fun rides, and so we'll continue to enjoy that, and by affirming it, you know, we're able to continue to manifest it. So how cool is that?
Oh, that's the best part, because if you're able to really connect inside and make the outer world what you feel on the inside, that's what the whole point of us coming down here was. And our world has lost that. It has forgotten that. Hence, we're having so many issues. I'm doing a video this week about the Pluto-Uranus squares. It's a chaos theory. In many ways, the chaos is actually adjusting things correctly, because really the world we've been in was actually chaotic. So watching the chaos unfold in your life in many ways is the greatest thing that you could ever ask for.
Yeah, it's the ability to actually realize that none of this is separate. It is all part of this huge unfolding organism that is self-sustaining and self-perpetuating, and what appears to be chaos is merely another orgasm, and out of that there will be another birth.
Exactly. Well, thank you. It was an excellent show, and thank you everybody for watching us. We really appreciate it, and I hope everybody enjoyed this one.
Yeah, I think we had a great time, and you have safe travels, David. You've got a lot of things going on, so get out there, have fun, and you know, send me a postcard.
Well, we'll be continuing our shows, and I don't leave till the 20th, so I think we're going to record one more next week, and then I'll be doing that one from the road, and I think that one's bringing us to our Halloween special.
Yeah, that's going to be filled with all sorts of surprises and delightful things. Trick or treat.
Trick or treat. Well, thank you so much, you know, and I'm trick or treating already. But so thank you guys, and we'll see you next week.
Have a great one.
Bye.
Bye.